Hello, I am Ryan.
Hello, I am Amy. Welcome to Listen to English Podcast. Today's episode is about how to think in English.
That's right. We're tackling something that so many people who are learning English want to know about.
Yeah,
You know, how to actually think in English instead of translating, like all the time in your head.
yeah. It appears that a lot of people, when they're learning English, what they do is they translate in their head from their native language to English. And this is it's slow. It takes time.
Totally. It's like you've got someone in the middle, like translating for you.
Yeah.
It's not efficient, and it doesn't sound natural at all. That's what we want to help you with. We want to help you be able to think in English and then, therefore, speak more fluently and confidently.
Yeah, for sure. I think so too. So, like, let's unpack this a little bit, right? What's actually happening in our brains when we're trying to think in another language?
Well, it seems like our brains are kind of hardwired to just use our native language. That's what we're most comfortable with. So when we're trying to use a new language, our first instinct is to go back to what's familiar and translate.
Right. It's like our brain is trying to find an anchor or something familiar. But that translation process, even if it only takes, a fraction of a second, it creates a roadblock.
It's like, when you try to drive with the parking brake on. You can still move, but it's going to be slow and kind of jerky and not very efficient.
Right. So how do we take off that parking brake, right? How do we train our brains to just think directly in English?
That is the question, isn't it?
Mm.
Luckily, there are some techniques that are proven to work. It's not like you just flip a switch, but it's more about rewiring your brain. You have to just be consistent and keep practicing.
Yeah, for sure. And it appears that one of the best techniques is to start really small. Focus on those basic building blocks, those direct connections between a word in English and the actual thing it represents.
So, instead of starting off trying to think in, complex sentences, we should really just start with easy everyday words.
Exactly. So think about things you see around you. What are you doing? How are you feeling? And try to just name those things in English.
So, if I see a cat, I should just think cat and not, whatever it is in my native language.
Exactly. You're bypassing that extra step of translation, and you're just making a direct link between what you see and the English word.
Like creating a shortcut instead of taking the long way by translating.
Right. And the more you use those shortcuts, the more they become automatic.
And actually, studies show that's exactly how babies learn a language.
Mm.
They don't translate, right?
Yeah.
They just learn to associate words with what they see and do and feel.
Right. They're constantly taking in information. They're making connections and building their vocabulary. And we can do that too as adults, even if we are learning a new language.
It's not about age. It's about having the right attitude. Approaching language learning like a child does.
Yeah.
Be curious and just try things out.
I totally agree. It's about, enjoying the process. Sometimes you'll make mistakes. Sometimes you'll get things right. And little by little, you'll become more fluent.
Okay, so we've been talking about labeling things. What's the next step in this training?
Well, once you're good with single words, you can try to make short phrases.
Right. Okay, so instead of just dog, I can think the dog is brown or the dog is barking.
Perfect. Now you are learning more words and also how to put them together. You're getting your brain used to thinking in English phrases.
It's like those first steps toward fluency.
Mm.
You're building confidence and you're getting better at thinking in English.
Exactly. And as you keep practicing, those phrases will come more naturally. You won't even have to think about the grammar rules or anything. It'll just happen.
It's like learning to ride a bike. In the beginning, it's wobbly and you're not sure. But then the more you practice, it just becomes something you do without thinking.
That's a great analogy. And just like riding a bike, just take your time. You don't have to, start racing before you can even ride.
So no need to try to think, like Shakespeare right away.
No, definitely not. Just focus on the little things. Be happy when a phrase just comes to you without even thinking about it. That means you're on the right track.
I like that idea a lot. We should be looking for progress, not perfection. And enjoy the process of learning, not just thinking about the end goal.
Exactly. Learning a language is an adventure that you can enjoy for your whole life. And the more fun you have, the more likely you are to keep going.
Speaking of fun, I've heard of a trick people use to sort of surround themselves with English even when they're not studying.
Oh, you're probably thinking of changing your phone and all your apps to English.
That's it. It's such a simple thing. But does it actually help?
It appears that it does. You'd be surprised how much just seeing the language all the time can help you. We spend so much time on our phones, right? You're always scrolling and typing and reading, so even if you're not, like, studying the words, your brain is still taking it in.
So it's like you're always getting little bits of English, without even realizing it.
Exactly. And it's not just the words. You're also picking up, the rhythm of English, how it flows, how it all fits together. It's like when you're listening to a song, you might not be singing along, but you still hear the melody.
And after a while, that melody starts to sound familiar. So familiar that you might even start humming it without realizing it.
Exactly. That's what immersion does. It's like your brain is like soaking up the language and it starts to like fill every corner of your mind.
That's a great way to put it. And it makes me think about all the different ways we can do that, create that immersion, even if we don't, live in a place where everyone speaks English.
There are tons of ways, like listening to podcasts and music, or watching movies and TV, or reading English books and articles.
It's about making English a part of your life, not just something you study from a book.
Exactly. And the more you do that, the more natural it will feel to think in English.
So we've talked about labeling things, then making phrases, and then this idea of immersion. What's the next step?
Well, now that your brain is getting more comfortable with English words and phrases, you can try to think in full sentences.
Okay, so this is where it gets, a little more challenging.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. But don't worry, it's not as hard as it seems. Remember all the work we've already done? Now we're just putting it all together.
So instead of just thinking, hungry, I would think, I am feeling hungry. Or I am hungry because I haven't eaten all day.
Yes, exactly. You are adding more detail and information to your thoughts. You are using grammar and building your ability to express yourself in English.
And I guess doing this helps us to just naturally learn grammar rules since we're using them, in real situations and not just trying to memorize them.
Exactly. When we think in sentences, we automatically start using the right word order and tenses because that's just how the language works.
It's like our brains are figuring out the puzzle of English grammar without even trying too hard.
Right. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes. You'll stop even thinking about the rules. They'll just come to you naturally.
So it's like we're learning to be fluent in the language of our own minds. We can express what we think and feel clearly, without struggling.
Yeah. That's what we're all aiming for, right? To express ourselves fully and honestly, both in our heads and when we speak.
Totally. And it starts with, being willing to think in English,
Yeah.
embrace the challenge, and have fun while you're doing it.
It appears that there's like a connection between the language we think in and our emotions. What if, like, thinking in English actually changes how we feel?
That's a really good question. I never really thought about it, but it makes sense. Like, the words we use change how we see the world, so maybe they also change how we feel about things.
Exactly. Think about it. We use words to describe how we feel, to express our emotions. So the language we're using has to affect how we actually experience those emotions, right?
So you're saying if I'm thinking in English, I might feel differently than if I'm thinking in, my first language. That's pretty crazy.
It is. It shows how powerful language can be. Studies show that some people who speak more than one language, they say they feel differently depending on which language they're thinking in.
Can you give me an example?
Well, some people say they feel more distant from their feelings when they're using their second language. Like there's a wall between them and what they're feeling.
That's interesting. It's like our emotions are being filtered through language.
Yes, exactly. It's not that one language is more emotional or anything like that. It's more about, the little differences, the shades of meaning.
So maybe it's easier to express some emotions in one language than another.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like, each language has its own way of expressing feelings. Some feelings are easier to show in one language, others are easier in another.
I'm realizing now that thinking in English is more than just grammar and vocabulary. It's also a whole new way of understanding and expressing how we feel.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what makes learning a new language so amazing. It's a way to, learn more about yourself and see the world in a new way.
This is making me think. If we want to get really good at thinking in English, should we be paying more attention to how the language is used to express emotions?
I think it's a great idea. It appears that when we have positive feelings when we're learning English, it's more fun and we learn better.
Right. If you hate practicing, it's going to feel like a chore. But if we can make it fun and interesting and like you said, connect to how we feel, then we'll be more likely to keep doing it.
It's like anything, really. When we're excited about something and enjoying it, we do better.
So we shouldn't think of learning to think in English as something hard. We should see it as an adventure, a chance to explore how English speakers use their language to, like, express what they feel.
I like that a lot. It's about being curious and open and really wanting to understand the language.
We've been talking about all these positive things, but we should probably say that trying to think in English can be kind of scary, especially at first.
Totally. It's like sharing your deepest thoughts and feelings in a language that doesn't feel completely yours yet.
It's totally normal to feel, embarrassed or worried about making mistakes.
Of course. But we have to remember, making ourselves vulnerable is how we grow. It's how we get out of our comfort zone and just get better.
And I think it's so important to celebrate even the small victories.
Yes. Every little step forward, every time you have that aha moment, every time you can say what you mean, it's a reason to celebrate.
Do you remember any aha moments when you were learning English, like a time when you felt a lot more confident?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I remember the first time I had a dream in English. It was like, wow, this language is really becoming a part of me. It wasn't foreign anymore. It was like it was in my head.
That's incredible. It's like your brain was giving you a high five.
Right. It made me want to keep going, to keep learning. And I really think everyone can have those moments of like fuel for your language learning journey.
It's encouraging to hear that. But, I mean, we all know that learning isn't always exciting and full of those aha moments. There are days when you feel stuck or you feel like you're not making any progress. What advice would you give someone who's feeling that way?
It appears that the best thing to do is remember why you started learning English. What were your goals? What did you want to be able to do? Go back to that feeling, that excitement. It can help you get through those tough times.
It's like having a compass, right?
Yeah.
Keeps you going in the right direction even when it's hard.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes just try something new. Try a different way of learning. Listen to or watch something different or find someone new to practice with.
So keep things fresh and interesting.
Yes. Keep trying things, keep learning, and find ways to make it fun.
And don't forget to take breaks. Sometimes you just need to, step away and come back later with more energy.
Absolutely. Learning a language is a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's okay to stop and rest and celebrate how far you've come. Remember, you don't have to learn everything at once.
You'll have good days and bad days. Sometimes you'll feel lost or go in the wrong direction. But as long as you keep trying, even if it's just a little bit every day, you'll reach your goal.
That's a good way to think about it. It reminds us that we're all learning together and that it's okay to have a hard time sometimes. It's okay to take a break. And we should celebrate all of our successes, no matter how small.
So let's all raise a glass to this messy, beautiful, and rewarding process of learning to think in English.
Yes. To all the mistakes and all the successes along the way.
Cheers. We've been talking about the mental and emotional side of thinking in English. But before we finish this part of our conversation, we have to talk about something really important.
I'm listening. What is it?
It's practice. That's how we take what we've learned and actually get better. We can talk about all these great techniques, but if we don't practice, they won't do anything.
It appears that you're absolutely right. It's like having a really nice, really fast car, but never driving it. We need to use these techniques to put them into practice and see how they work in real life.
I like that. That's a great way to think about it. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't use it, it's useless. So how do we make practice like a regular part of learning English?
I think we need to change how we think about practice. Instead of seeing it as a chore, we need to see it as like a fun opportunity to play with the language, to experiment, and to find new ways to express ourselves.
So it's not about drilling flashcards or doing grammar exercises. It's about finding fun and engaging ways to use the language.
Exactly. Think of it as like a creative outlet. You can write, talk with other English speakers, record yourself, even just think to yourself in English while you're doing your daily routine.
I've heard of people using social media to practice English. They join groups, talk about things they're interested in, and even make videos in English. It's a cool way to connect with other people, get feedback, and just be more confident, all in a friendly environment.
That's a fantastic idea. It's so important to find people who are learning too. A place where it's okay to make mistakes, ask questions, and celebrate each other's progress. Learning a language is something we do together.
It's about connecting with others, sharing ideas, and learning about other cultures. When we think of it that way, practice isn't just memorizing things. It's about having real conversations and connecting with other people.
Yes, exactly. And when we do that, our brains are learning, making new connections, and getting better at using the language. It's like, working out. The more you do it, the stronger you get.
And just like with working out, it's important to be consistent. It's better to practice a little bit every day than to try to do a lot all at once.
Absolutely. Make it a habit, something you just do naturally. The more you practice, the more fluent and confident you'll become, and the better you'll be able to express yourself.
It's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And thinking in English is so worth the effort. So let's all make a commitment to practice, enjoy the process, and celebrate every step along the way.
And remember, there's no end to learning a language. It's an adventure that lasts your whole life. And there are always new things to learn, new things to discover, and new people to connect with.
That's so true. And as we go on this adventure, I think it's good to remember what Nelson Mandela said. It always seems impossible until it's done.
I love that quote. It reminds us that even if something seems really hard, we can do it if we just keep trying, if we're determined, and if we believe in ourselves. I always love talking about languages, and I hope our listeners got a lot out of this.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of thinking in English. We hope you learned some useful tips, got some inspiration, and are even more motivated to keep learning.
Remember, you can become fluent. Just take it one step at a time, enjoy the challenge, and never give up on your goals.
So go out there, think in English, and see how much your world opens up.
Happy learning, everyone.
See you next time.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow and reach more English learners like you. By subscribing, you'll never miss a new episode, and by liking the video, you're letting us know you want more helpful content. Thank you for your support. It means so much to us.